got some food in you. You went out in the rain. You're refreshed. You're good to go. And this next panel, our second panel of the day, is going to blow your minds. Because not only are they going to talk about broadening making to be more inclusive, but also creative computation. So I'm going to turn it over to Errol King, the moderator from Google, and it's all yours. Go for it. Give him a round of applause.
All right, everybody. So today on this panel, we'll be discussing casting a broad maker lens, creative computation, and creative making. I'm Errol King. I'm a student experience manager at Google. What does that mean? I work in diversity programs focusing on expanding the pool of future technologists, thinking about how space impacts learning, curriculum impacts learning, pedagogy, and all these things as a full stack experience. And designing place-based approaches to improving the long-term STEM pipeline and computer science pipeline. So you don't need to know much more about me. I'm not the star of the show. We have a wonderful panel here. You will know that this is also a very playful panel. We've had a fun pregame. Also note, the division of gender on the stage is not by our designation, but by the orientation of the slides chosen by the AV team. So that's that. I just want to put that out there. All right, so without further ado, here's the clicker. We can only go forward from here. Aman Milner.
You're too kind. You're too kind. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aman Milner, and I'm a professor of computing and innovation at the Olin College of Engineering. So we're going to start by just telling you a little bit about where we're coming from and then mapping our own institutions or places of work to creative computing so you know who you're talking to in the panel. So I can tell you a little bit about Olin College of Engineering. You might not have heard about it because we're pretty small. We have 350 students, and we're a laboratory to do engineering education differently. And so we want to provide a great experience for those at our college. We have 350 students, 35 faculty, so that we can stack the deck and do a really good job of giving them hands-on learning. And we give them 3 degrees. One of the degrees you can make your own degree, so it could be engineering _ computing or engineering _ bioengineering, engineering _ whatever the next major is that will be important in 5 years. We have 50-50 gender balance among the students, and we're trying to catch up with the faculty. And so that is the backdrop of where I teach computing in a way that I believe is creative, and hopefully I can convince you that as well. So some of the projects in my class, these are some of my students that I'm teaching right now, technically, but I have a co-instructor teaching on my behalf so I could be here with you. And you see some hands-on learning. You might recognize one of the items in that picture. If you have the little red bag, you also have a makey that you could play with, but getting hands-on is important. And we do that in computing. So we think that this picture of working and problem solving in a team is an important factor of a good engineering education. So we have a lot of team-based work, and we do that from the time students start at the college until they graduate. So you don't have to wait until a capstone where you get to work on a team and do a real project. So I have students that are working on technologies that are like makeys, where you're trying to give people an early start in engineering by creating things that they can play with in a way that you can just sort of take it out of the box and get into tinkering with computing and electronics. One of the projects that you see here highlights one of the activities that I think is important to creative computing, and I'll show you that these are a set of light-up tiles that you can program, and you take one of the areas that kids are very creative in, which is outdoor play. So if you've seen, who has played a game of tag in their lifetime? Anybody play tag? Who has played a game of tag that did not start with their regular rules? Freeze tag, some modification, right? So people make rules and break rules of the game all the time. I just got introduced to tunnel tag from, not tunnel tag, but toilet tag, which is something I didn't even, so I could give you a demonstration later if the panel didn't.
I just played toilet tunnel tag.
Exactly, so it keeps going and going. So rules are meant to be changed by young people, and that's the way you could look at computing. And they're doing this all the time, so instead of putting computing at the end of a formal CS curriculum that's gone through K-12 and you go through college being a computing major and you've gone through your physics and math death march, then you get to take computing classes and electives. I think that I try to take computing out into places where kids are already creative. And so that's the one recipe for creative computing. So you allow them to think about, you're changing rules for a game like tag already. Why don't we work on changing the rules of these tiles that are on your feet. The colors that you're stepping on right now don't have to be those colors. You can make it so that you step on red and it goes down to her, it comes back blue, and you can make those rules. So that's the way I try to attack computing early when people are already in that mode of being creative and being playful, and they're up on their feet and they're active. And the up on the feet part is important because computing doesn't have to be a solitary act that's on one keyboard and one screen. So that the way that computing has been taught for a long time is it's hard to get collaborative and creative when you're doing it in that lens where there's one mouse to control. And so doing it active with your peers, as you can see on the screen, is a place to start where you already have the creative and collaborative environment and you add computing. So I need one volunteer so I can close off my slides. So I'm going to pick on somebody. You, sir. Would you join me on stage, please? All right, you are the pipeline in computer science. All right, I'd like you to walk and sit in that chair right there that's empty, please. All right, this is the computer science pipeline, right? If it is a pipeline, that means I follow that same path, and I sit on this chair. It's already taken, it might be. So the path that you took, thank you so much, that was an excellent walk. It's very... So the way that we talk about computing and getting in the pipeline, the STEM and those things, if we change the way that we talk about it, because someone could be starting from over here, not even on those steps, and they may want to take this path and realize that I'm playing on the playground, and I realize that this is a lot like computing, and somebody just showed me that. Then I can make my own pathway and find my way to the same destination, but it doesn't have to be through the pipeline. So pathfinding is something that I focus on, and I try to find people where they're already on a path, and I get younger and younger as these slides progress. So this is me working with young people in my college has a trailer where I go out and try to meet people around places like an ice cream truck where they're out in the park and they're gathered already, and then I could turn their popsicle sticks into something that's engineering related, and they can write programs that connect to it. And so that's one way to try to take the creativity of where people already are and find new ways to engage people so that they're coming from different paths and finding the way to computing.
I didn't even know we could get up, so this is kind of... what I love, but seriously, what I love about, first of all, thank you for having me. My name is Mark Lesser. I'm the Senior Director of Learning Design for an organization called Mouse. I'll show you some of what we do in our values in weirdly formatted, apparently, slides. What I love about getting to do this kind of thing is people like Aman, who I think a lot of times we make the mistake, and this is a pipeline and a same pathway mistake, that we tend to think that it's the designers and artists who are the rule breakers and path not followers. But I meet so many engineers who embody that spirit, and it just makes me excited about the work that I get to do, which I'll tell you all a little bit about. So thank you for doing that. Had I known, this would have been, I had an interpretive dance. Mouse is 20 years strong this year. We're a New York-based organization. We started in the late 90s during the sort of tech bubble here in New York. And we really started by empowering young people in the context of schools who were being overloaded with hardware and software and being burdened to think about instructional technology when at a time when they couldn't even really figure out the infrastructure. And so we saw that as an amazing opportunity to help young people step up and pivot in learning environments to a space where young people can do the kind of thing that we saw this morning so amazingly happening in Virginia, where young people are really taking control and there's just so much agency involved. What we've evolved to over the years is we are, on one hand, a STEM support organization. We work in schools and after-school programs across the country. Our home base is still here in New York, but we're about 300 sites nationally in about 15 states. And we do STEM, but I make it a point always to talk about what this organization was founded on were the principles of youth development. And so I always say we are a youth development organization that gets to work at this interesting intersection of technology and education, because I do think it's an amazing moment for young people and agency, and for us to realize what for 100 years, people have been defining as project-based learning. So creative computing. We talk a lot about this quote. You probably wondered how. This is, Marian Wright Edelman just has such a powerful way, and you can't be what you can't see. And we think a lot about this anytime phrases like creative computing come up. What does it mean to a teenager in the Bronx who does not have a cousin or an uncle working at Google, or a parent who went to the interactive telecommunications program at NYU? What does creative computing mean? And part of what we always talk about when we train educators who work with us is not to start there, not to start with jargon, but instead help them make meaning in this space for themselves and help them understand and see it in ways that are real and are about their points of engagement, not yours as an academic or an educator. But I will say that Aman's we talked a lot about the definition for creative computing being more of a recipe than a definition. And Aman and engineers like him and educators like him are the best definitions that I've heard in this space. So just to contribute a little something from a different angle on creative computing is just to emphasize how important it is that we're talking not just about skills. When you ask higher education right now outside of Aman's program, when you ask them what is creative computing, a lot of them will say CSS and JavaScript. They talk about skills like this. I just want to emphasize for us at Mouse, and I think for a lot of people in this room, we're really interested in this developmental trajectory where young people, whether they're engaging in an hour-long project or attending a maker night at Mouse, which we throw once a month, open, free, come get your hands on things, or they're doing a semester-long course, that everybody's entering into this trajectory in a serious way, but the job isn't done when young people have come to Maker Faire and left. Our job is about helping them take the next step along that trajectory and making sure that they're moving from being someone in this space to being experts in this space and being able to pass it on. So I will very quickly say Mouse is a platform. We offer to schools and after-school programs nationally STEM projects and content that can fit into courses, electives, after-school programs. We're a program model. We do design and engineering programming for middle and high schools, and we're constantly trying to figure out how we support you all to do the amazing work you do. So thank you again for inviting us to be here today.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Leah Gilliam. I'm the Vice President of Education, Strategy, and Innovation at Girls Who Code. It is a pleasure to be here and to talk amongst these people. We've been having a lot of fun just in preparing and trying to broaden this idea of creativity and computing. My work has always been at the intersection of learning and creativity, and I really think that some of the things that we'll talk about today and this whole weekend is always a great sort of boost and a good kind of inspiring way to think about those ideas. So Girls Who Code, for me, is really, its instantiation in the world in some ways is through these two programs that I'll describe to you. Our Summer Immersion Program, which is a 7-week-long program, deep dive into computational thinking and computer science, and then our after-school Girls Who Code clubs, grassroots, in your local neighborhood. Our 7-week immersion program happens in 11 different markets, different urban markets nationally. And what we've really seen with this model is that this particular immersion program, which brings young girls who are juniors or seniors, rising juniors or seniors in high school, into tech companies to learn computational thinking, to learn computer science, to do project-based learning, and really begin to transform that idea of what a computer scientist looks like. This program first started really as an intervention, as a way to broaden this conversation about the gender gap in technology and to really help plant this seed in girls' minds that they could be a computer scientist too. And in terms of our work, we have a very broad understanding of computer science in some ways. We see it as the new sort of liberal arts, having this computational thinking, understanding problem solving, the relevance and impact of problem solving, of creative problem solving, becomes a way that can drive anything you do going forward. So we really see it as the strongest foundation to give girls going forward. So our summer program really has a very particular approach, and I thought it would be interesting to talk a little bit more about our clubs program, because as educators, I think it has and being an out-of-school model, it probably has it feels more scalable, it feels more adaptable. But our summer immersion program, we work with tech companies, we try to give girls a sense of what it looks like to be a computer scientist in the real world. So they have female role models, they're meeting software engineers, they're going off and doing site visits. They get to see that there are people who look like them, who are doing the kinds of things that they're experiencing in their immersion program. So a little bit about our clubs program, because this is a curriculum that we just relaunched and just really thought about. And in terms of our impact and our approach, I think it's interesting within this context. So one is thinking from a much larger scale about computer science and helping girls to see the relevance of computer science and the way that computer science impacts the world around them, and having them sort of localize this thing so that they're working together on what we call the CS Impact Project, so a computer science impact project that they work with all of the different girls in their club, and they try to sort of think about how they can take the skills that they've learned in the club throughout the semester or the 2 semesters and apply that to a problem they see around them. And then the third component of the clubs program is this larger component of sisterhood, and we really think about the importance of community and really making sure that girls understand that it's supportive engagement and it's encouraging other people who look like them and helping them to meet challenges that really is the key to maintaining interest in computer science and to surviving. So we don't throw the word around, we try to make sure that it's something that girls understand, and we know from the research that having a supportive environment of people who look like you, who have shared interests, is really the key to continuing interest in anything, computer science or anything. So we really try to give girls that sense of that larger community, and that while what they're doing can be very hard and challenging and totally discouraging, there are other people around them who are doing that work too. And then the last thing, but certainly not least, is the actual technical foundation that we give the young women who are in our after-school clubs. So we talk about this as the core 4. And we use project-based learning and different kind of sets of activities to help girls really understand the basics of computational thinking and programming. So we're not focusing on one language. The idea really is to make sure that they understand the basics so that they can go forward and try anything out and feel confident in doing that work. So that's a little bit about our clubs program, and then I wanted to just point you to some of the great projects that some of the Girls Who Code have done. The website projects.girlswhocode.com features all of the projects from our 2016 Summer Immersion Program. This is an amazing way to just look and see what girls who are completely new to computer science, who are new to programming, who have spent a little bit of time working with different programming languages, what they do when they have 2 weeks on their own and are really focused on it. And the thing that always really amazes me, it's not that every project is something that is mapping and trying to change the world, but just the different approaches that you see that young women take when they have access to technology. Like they think about the relevance, they think about the importance, they think about how to solve problems that are around them. They also think about really cool things like a video game where you're throwing tampons at people, but that's something else. But to me as an educator, it's so important to go and see what are the things that girls actually make when you motivate them, you give them the support, you give them the community that they need. So just take a look, pick a city and go and see 2 or 3 projects that are there, and just sort of dig into it, see how it was made. They have their own project descriptions there. They sort of talk about why it's important to them. And I hope it'll be sort of inspirational for you as you work with your students, because in a lot of ways, I always find it very surprising to see the deep seriousness and then the great sort of silliness that the girls bring to the work. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. I'm Hilary Colos. That's me. Hilary Colos, the Director of Digital Learning for the DreamYard Project in the Bronx, New York. And first I want to see, is there anyone who's from or teaches in the Bronx in the room? Can I hear you? I can't. Yes. So then you know what I know, that the Bronx is the most creative borough in New York City, right? Yeah. Yes. Thank you. And if you, I know that was going to be controversial, but I think it's true because of the young people I work with. And if you don't know that, you should be going to the Bronx and checking out all the great work that's going on up there. So DreamYard is an arts and social justice organization. It's been around for over 20 years. And we have in-school programs in over 40 schools. We have an art center in Morrisania in the Bronx. And we have a high school called DreamYard Prep. And also I want to say thank you for having me here. I'm so humbled to be on the stage with these folks. This is really a powerhouse team, so thank you for having me. So at DreamYard, we work K through 12, even pre-K. We work with families. And in the 4 years ago, thanks to generous funding from Cognizant, we were able to start a maker program. And ever since then, we've been trying to figure out, what do we mean by maker? What does this really mean at DreamYard? And not what does it mean for everybody, but just particularly with our community and in our organization. And these are some beautiful pictures of some of our amazing young people. We have a maker class at our art center, but we also have fashion and visual art. So we consider almost everything we do making, but we do have a maker particular class. And we're starting to hear more from schools that they want this type of class. Usually they come to us and say, we want robotics. Get it? It's fun. Robots are fun. And then we say, but we're an arts organization. We can offer you a maker class. And then we have to kind of explain to them what that means, and we hope that it kind of broadens the ideas of what's possible. So at DreamYard, our approach, and a lot of these slides come from a Maker Institute that we had last April, where we did 3 days of trying to work with teaching artists who knew the tech but didn't know the art and social justice as much, and we tried to see if we could get them a little bit more into our approach. So we always try to integrate art and social justice into everything we do. We try to balance the technical skill and creative expression, and then always trying to make sure projects and examples we use and teachers are modeling and affirming the culture and backgrounds of our students, and the projects are culturally relevant. And I really think that's one of the biggest things we can do as teachers. I'm a white woman. I teach in the Bronx. Most of my students are Black and Latino, maybe newcomers to the U.S. And it's my job to do the research to find those projects and not just be like, this is what I heard that Maker is, and but really to find out what they're interested in, do the research on Black and Latino artists and makers and inventors, and really expand what that definition is. And that's all of our jobs, right? And okay, I made this. It might be slightly controversial, maybe not. But I was trying to help us as our team at DreamYard to understand where DreamYard fell within a maker world. So I picked these two axes. You could have a bunch of different axes if you want, I'm sure. But I did from analog to digital and then functional to expressive. And I think all kinds of making are creative. So this is getting at what do we mean by creative making. And I'm more on the making side than the computation side at DreamYard. But I thought what I really try and focus on is the functional to expressive, because we are an arts organization. So whatever we make usually has to work and be functional, but we also try to make sure it has an expressive component that is either exploring questions of identity or culture or community. But all of these are equally valid. It's just, this is how we try to explain to our teaching artists in our schools what we want. It's a draft document. You guys have ideas about it, let me know. This is my first shot of trying to map us somewhere. And then I thought, because there's so many great teachers in the room, just give you an example of a project. This guy here in the red shirt is Jose Olivares, who now works for NYC DOE, yes, on the working with the computer science team there. He was one of our first maker teachers, and he worked with another team member, Sydney Gray, on our maker class. And this is a pixel art project. So I don't know if you guys know about pixel art. It's kind of been around since Nintendo and beyond, before, right? Just making art using digital pixels. So he brought in a guest artist who did pixel artwork, and then he had them, I think this is a really great scaffolded project. Over a couple weeks, he had them do pixel art with Post-its. He had them do pixel art, designing a community superhero, someone that could act in their community and do good, and use a program called PicDraw, and then they made a physical version. And I think all this came from, our kids walked in all wearing these perler bead necklaces of Nintendo characters. It was kind of cool 2 years ago. And we were like, guys, you don't have to pay $20 for those. We can make them. So this is just one example of a project. Mark still thinks they're cool. He's always a little bit, a little behind. Cool. So thanks, everybody.
I think.
Hi, my name is Roy Salvin-Rackle. I'm the Director of Instructional Technology for the Manhattan Field Support Center in New York State Department of Education. And that is a long thing to say. Until September 1st, I was a classroom teacher. I taught at Halsey Junior High School, which is about a mile that way. And I was a computer science teacher. Before that, I was an English teacher. Before that, I was a journalist. So I've been through a few different iterations of careers. I had a lot of success with my computer talent program. There we go. And I was also a SEP, or software engineering pilot, first cohort. I don't know if you've heard of that. That was what CS for All, pretty much it's part of CS for All, part of CS for All. I'm a CS for All. So I'm helping roll out some of the, it's not called curriculum, we're calling them experiences. We're trying to give kids experiences in every possible subject area that they can bring. We call it computer science, but it doesn't just have to be computer science. Computational, creative computational thinking. Sometimes that means that they're sitting on a floor trying to figure out how to make a maze using pieces of paper, or sometimes they're programming robots, and sometimes they're making games, and sometimes they're drilling holes in models. That's really hard. I did not know how hard that was going to be. But overall, it's been about bringing the creative to the classroom, giving the kids every opportunity to make, and to make things that they wouldn't have made or thought to make on their own. And the way I've done it, and I think I want to be, I'm not the only teacher in New York City who does this by a long shot. There are so many creative, innovative educators in New York City, and I'm representing them and you as an example of how you take a curriculum. There was no curriculum when I started teaching computer talent. I was told to make their face literacy, and instead I sort of wanted to bring more creativity to it, because if you're a room full of sixth graders and they're not engaged, you're dead. And that wasn't gonna. I wasn't gonna go down that way. It's a reality. So I brought things that I found interesting into the classroom, but I had to find ways to teach it to them. I wanted to teach them movie making, game design, anything that was creative, and there wasn't a lot of resources, or at least I didn't know where to find those resources, but we were a mouse school, which then we learned. And every time I went to any sort of training, and they offer a lot of training, if you're not a mouse school, I say this to every school I go to, look up mouse, check them out. You will get so much bang for your buck, it's not even funny. The trainings that they give us, they give the educators, I could take that and turn it around and build a much larger unit based on this one little kernel that they shared with me, like game design, board game design. They gave us a packet of bag full of stuff. He said, make a game out of it. And then in an hour, we had a game. Well, you can turn that into a longer project. You can turn that into a making project, where they're not just making their game, you design it, talk about game logic, talk about how do you design the board itself, graphic design project, and how do you design those pieces? That's a 3D design project. And then how do you do your game engine? You know, you do dice, you can do cards. All of this is all computational thinking, though it comes with this game attachment to it. So the kids are like, yeah, let's make a game. They get crazy excited and so into it that people walk into the room and they see all these things out. And, oh, they're playing. No. They're not playing, they're making. So there's a lot to making. It isn't only physical, and it isn't only on the computer. It's in the mind. It's understanding that there isn't anything you can't revise, remix, remake in your own way. So I went out and I hunted down opportunities and exposed myself to things like New York Hall Science. I raised my children here. I brought them here every chance I could. When it was a rainy day, we were here. And then all the programs they offered. Well, why not bring that into the class? We would go to the Museum of the Moving Image, and they did a whole bunch of workshops on Scratch. Scratch is fabulous. So I brought that into the class. And Maker Faire. They thank you again, Mouse, for bringing us to Maker Faire, the very first Maker Faire here. I missed, because I was like, Maker Faire, I do that in my class. And then I came, and I've never left. And I brought it into my classroom. You can bring Maker Faire. If you come to Maker Faire, if you've never come to Maker Faire, come. If you've been and you know, you can carry it into your classroom. You can bring that sense of there isn't anything you can't make if you put your mind to it. Maybe we can't make it in the 45 minutes we're here together, but here's something that you can try on your own. Giving them the tools that they can turn around and turn to is the wrong word, but use in every subject, science, English, social studies. That's why CS for All is really a very promising program, because, again, in math, why can't you do computer science? What about Spanish? Yeah, you can. How? That's the creative part. So, onward. I am, like I said, now the director of instructional technology, and this morning I went to my old school and I dropped off some tickets and I saw some of my kids, and I feel really, I miss them a lot, but I have schools that I'm able to work in. I'm working in New Design Middle School. We're going to be building a makerspace there, and I'm going to be helping them with that program. PSIS 96 is rolling out iPads to every student, and they're going to be doing some makerspace work there. Music Spirit Academy, all of the things that I couldn't have done if I were still in the classroom, I can take to the teachers and bring to the schools, and then they can bring to their students. So if I've touched one teacher, they've touched 300 kids. Touched the student. Engaged,
Impacted.
interacted. Yeah. That you know what I mean.
All right. So,
So that's my spiel.
all right. So first of all, give it up for the panel. I mean, this is tremendous work. So, let the games begin. So we have 3 goals for this panel. When we got together, we pre-gamed and decided that there were 3 things we wanted to do for you. One was try to define creative computation and making, provide a sort of myriad of approaches and strategies you can take. As you can see, some of it is going to be very scrappy, but maybe there are some frameworks that are emerging, so we'll talk about that. And then within that, sort of provide some tangible takeaways. What can you do tomorrow? Well, not tomorrow because it's Saturday, but
Maker Faire.
So with that, now the panel pushed me to go online and find a definition of creative computation, to which I declined. We're going to play a quick game. The recommendation, however, was to create a recipe. So let us play a game here where we will go around for 3 rounds. And we're going to do 1, maybe 2. I'll allow you to do a hyphenated word. To throw into the pot of defining creative computation, and making. Sorry, I have to do that because it's kind of in my mind, my language here. So take about 10 seconds, and then we're going to rapid fire. What is it? What does it smell like? What does it feel like? What does it sound like? And Lori.
Oh,
Fire.
I'm sorry. I'm just thinking, what does it smell like? It smells like burning plastic.
Awesome. Rapid fire.
I'm going to say it's juicy.
Juicy. Okay.
Please.
Iterative. Generative.
Chaotic.
Brave.
Culturally affirming. It's a hyphenated word, I think.
Hyphenate.
There's got to be like some formula there. There's systems involved.
Systems.
System. Forget it.
Collaborative.
It's a word that has the root in system, generally speaking.
Collaborative.
Mistake filled.
There's a lot of agency.
I love agency. I'm saying. You said it before. It's a great word.
It's your final word.
It's my final word.
It's your final word.
Epic.
Expressive? Did we say that yet?
No, I
Expressive?
don't think so.
Expressive.
Wait, why do you feel like we're leaving you to?
You can say whatever you want.
I don't know, Leah. I don't know about that one.
It's all the like creative good words, and I'm like, but it's code, you guys. It's computation. Like, you know, it's got some.
We value that too.
Order. I'll just say it has some order to it. Ordered.
Sequential. It's right. These are CT concepts.
Let's go, Mark.
Interpretive dance.
Dance it out, Mark.
Improvisational.
Nice.
For everyone.
Oh, wow. All right. We have created the positive the positive space. Let us create the negative space of the image. What is it not? Single word. Sorry, I just totally threw a curveball at them. We wrote down all these questions. I was like, we're going to ask these 5 questions. But they're such a playful panel. I figured we'd go in the other way. So let's reverse it. Go ahead, Amon.
Follow these instructions specifically. Exactly. Hyphen.
Marketing.
Do like I do.
Highly competitive.
Perfect.
Oh, wow.
Deep, y'all.
That's a stumper. I feel like it's step by step, but it's not predetermined, right? It's not predetermined.
No fun.
Necessarily expensive.
It's a good one. Afterward, you're gonna cheer for who you thought came up with the best words in the end. So keep a tab. Homogeneous? Are we getting?
We're getting interactive.
Wait, all right. I like this. Yeah.
That was mine.
Well done.
Yeah, I'll do the same. Someone else say
Thank
something.
you. Crowdsource it.
Phone a friend, please. Phone a friend.
I'm calling a friend, yeah. I'll take another one from the audience. Not textbook, not individual.
Wow. These are good. Yeah. Sure. Three more. Outsourced. Organized. Institutionalized and boring.
I heard static as well.
Static. So, that's not nice. All right, so, I wanted to do that because I feel like there's an instinct. It seems like there's an instinct to creative computation making. I think that a lot of folks who are here today have sort of feel in their gut that they are doing something, that this is the right way that it should feel. So I think that instead of sort of like trying to define it in words, but sort of give you a sense of the space. In any case, moving on. One thing I wanted to hop in with you, Laurie, because we have, if you're a teacher in a school, raise your hands. Yes, so we have a lot of folks who are thinking about how this plays out in school. If you're doing making or computation, creative computation in your school, raise your hand. Oh, wow, okay. It sounds like you sort of like found pieces, pulled it together, and sort of built momentum and continued to define, that work. What was your strategy? How did you know you were onto the right thing? And what advice would you give in this point in time to someone who's continuing to build that experience in their in-school experience?
I think my strategy was always what interested me. I could put myself in the student's shoes and say, what would I want to learn? Like I said, I knew I wanted games, I knew I wanted movie making, I wanted web design, I wanted graphic design. I also did font design, which was an epic failure. But that was good because I learned not to do font design. That's really hard. The kids liked the drawing part, was making the vectors. So I understood the level. Every time I tried something, I would tell my kids, I was guinea pigging. We're all guinea pigging with our children at this point because there's no hardcore curriculum on this. And I'd rather there never be. I would much rather there be a plethora of opportunities for you to pick from based on your interest, because I think as soon as you come to a classroom excited about a project because you really want to teach it because you think your kids are going to love it because you do, they're going to catch it and they're going to run with it. So if I did, JavaScript, they would know that I wasn't so keen on JavaScript. But if I did, Scratch, they're like, oh yeah, Scratch is good. So that love the projects you teach, love the work that you do.
How many of us have had failures in this process of learning how to? So first of all, that's powerful, right? Because failure in the context of school is a very powerful idea and notion, very restricting. And as an educator, I would imagine that it would be limiting in what you were willing to try. So being here is really powerful, and hearing that from you that that there were failures. What do you think led to like some of those things? Like what, if you could say what to avoid to reduce the amount of failures one would have? Are there any thoughts around how to approach projects so that you can reduce that possibility?
In the spirit of rapid fire, I can share a quick one. Is a failure? There was an irony is that we're so focused on agency, but made a pretty epic mistake of early on when we started doing open maker nights to invite young people in to do everything from origami to learn their first lines of code. We made the mistake of theming those nights on the skills. So come learn Xcode, come learn, with the exception of game design, which is always a draw. Young people don't necessarily, young people don't care about the educator's nomenclature for like what's important about STEM. So when we themed things
tweet that, please, because that is clutch right there.
Come, hack the Star Wars narrative. That is a way more compelling thing and should have been so obvious to us from the start, but we learned the hard way.
Yeah, I was going to say also that in terms of failure, I think part of it is having that flexibility to be able to kind of talk through the failure with your students. And when it comes to creative computation and this kind of maker approach, that has so much to do with it. It's like, this didn't work, why didn't it work? And to try to troubleshoot or debug or try some new alternatives and to be able to have the comfort and have a few tricks up your sleeve so that you can try new things when what you originally planned didn't work. I feel like that's what that was the hardest transition for me in terms of going from a style of teaching where you knew what the outcome would be to a style of teaching in which you're just like, okay, we're going to design a game and your rules are going to be different than my rules, and you really open things up a little bit. But if knowing that, having that foundation and understanding your basics, I think becomes really important. And I love what you said just about teaching what you love. It really does make a huge difference.
Teaching future engineers, college students, is sometimes sparked and inspired by reading to 2-year-olds. Rosie Revere Engineer has a line where it says, "That's not a failure, that's a perfect first try." Yay. Right? So that's the one where if we just frame it as get there fast and we sort of replace failure with first try, then you can just take it out of the picture.
All right. On the I want to talk about failure because I feel like failure also implies that there's some testing involved, that there's some means of passing into some concept that what you did worked or what they have done worked. So I kind of wanted to get into this idea around assessment and how we talked. It was brought up earlier, and I kind of wanted to just bring it up with this group because I think we had somewhat of a beginning of a meaningful conversation in the pregame. How does assessment look? Is it you judging? Is it a self-assessment? Is it based on, observing the portfolio? If it is computational, are you looking for, the right implementation of a for loop? Like, how does it vary and look in these different ways? And how do you determine whether or not you hit the learning objectives if those are defined?
I'm just going to hop right in. If it works, it's success. I mean, that's just the most natural way to assess any kind of project. If the game can be played, if the code runs, if the robot goes the way it's supposed to. There's a lot of informal assessment that goes into all sorts of making that the kids are making on the spot as they're making it. This doesn't work, we try something else. And giving them the freedom to do that and to not tell them that they have to do X, Y, and Z, but they can try H and W and see what happens. If you can give them that freedom and that flexibility, your assessment is whether they try, whether they keep trying. You can have a rubric and have your end goals in mind. And certainly with coding, if it works, obviously they have it, but how do you determine whether or not this object that they've just designed is perfect? It's never going to be perfect, but if it prints out okay and it stands up and it does its function. So the assessment has to be a little bit different for making than it does for coding, than it does for science and math and all of that. But it's more self-assessment for the student because I think that they're so vested in what they're making.
So at DreamYard, we've had an ongoing partnership with Parsons, the new school for design, and working on digital portfolios. And they're changing their whole undergrad approach to portfolios to be more process-oriented. And we're trying to work with admissions as well to accept more kind of process portfolios. And I guess I would sort of build on Lori's, what she's saying. If it works, that's great. And then if it didn't work, and you were maybe putting it in a portfolio, the way we do portfolios is like you show your process, you show the finished piece, but then you also kind of like write about it, maybe reflect on that process. And I'm sure as teachers, many of you know about like metacognition, that if it didn't work, if you can explain why it didn't work and how you would have done it better, even if you don't get that chance to try, that's also could be a positive assessment, right? I would just add that into it too.
I think one of the things that's really important to think about, this kind of like backing up from the portfolios pieces, something that we resist, that's easy to resist, is that we're so busy, I think, as a community of educators focused on this stuff, proving that what looks like play to other people has outcomes, that a lot of times we have a hard time letting socialization, just socializing, pure coming to connect with peers happen. And this isn't always a luxury in school, although some of the cases we heard this morning that are happening in Virginia are a great example. So we resist. So we started these monthly maker nights. Young people come, make stuff, and we spent the first couple going, yeah, but you guys are connecting, but like, come do this thing. And here's how it connects to the assessment piece, is that I think at least a few people up here went to art school, and every time I talk to people about what art school has right about assessment, it's that it's a very social process. There's a crit. At the end of a course, you have a critique. And oftentimes, it's your professor who's actually sitting in the back of the room, and it's your peers who are the most critical of the work. That takes a lot of socializing. It takes a lot of comfort and trust and those kinds of things. So one of the things I think is so important about what's happening in assessment within maker education is that we're cognizant of the fact that young people need a chance to socialize and connect and build trust in one another so that they can re-enter the assessment process and have agency there as well. It's not just about them picking projects, it's also about re-entering the assessment process and becoming part of it, because when they enter the working world, I don't get assessed by somebody with a clipboard. I get assessed by my team, I get assessed by the people that I work with, I get assessed by colleagues from other organizations. So this is all mirroring the professional world, and that's what we're after. But we have to let hanging out happen. It's really, really important and pointed out now for almost a decade with work like Mimi Ito has done and others.
All right. No, sorry. Are we good on Q&A? Oh, man. I had a doozy lined up. All right. So do I just sort of
do it in the
forward,
post game?
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, panelists. I think you were awesome. It was really fun. I got to have lunch with you, too. My name is Tracy Gray, and I'm from Sankofa Global, and I'm very fortunate to have an exhibit at the Maker Faire. I've been a classroom teacher, I've been a principal, and now I have my own organization, and I work with schools throughout New York City. And in our most popular program, which is the Tinker Workshop Labs, I love what you had to say about failure, I love what you said about design, about experimenting, and, not but, and I think there is an opportunity to talk more about access. That here in the maker space, there is the opportunity to have maker space. When you are on the ground in schools where not only the students don't have the maker experience, but neither do the teachers nor do the administrators, there are real barriers. And too many for me to talk about right now, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with, but I'd love for you to speak more about how we can provide real space for everyone and access for everyone, regardless of their background, so that everyone has the opportunity to have the benefit of the experience that I've had as a student and as an educator, as an administrator, and now as an organization.
I was going to walk around.
I can start. What you said is so important. One, I just want to point out a great resource that just in longer form than the question you just asked, which is extremely eloquent. Leah Gilliam, if you haven't seen the talk that she gave at conference I.O., she did a talk at I.O. a couple of years ago and basically broke that issue down. And whether the commercial instantiation of the maker movement was really enough to move the needle for a kid in the Bronx or Bed-Stuy or elsewhere where everybody is from. Completely agree. I think one of the things I will say for us that's really important, and I came up before, is making sure that people understand that creative computing is not necessarily expensive. You see a lot of great examples of this at Maker Faire, that you can get started with creative computing for, if you wanted to start with simple circuits and building some great stuff, you can get started with $10 and an Amazon account. So I would just start there with making sure that we made the mistake, I think, as a few years ago with things like Lego NXT, which is a great system, but not accessible for a kid to go home and be able to buy for $350. So we need to kind of deconstruct that a little bit and make sure that young people are accessing the stuff that's inside. That's in a lot of cases $50 or less if you buy it at Spark Fun or one of these.
Can I just hop on this one? The work that I'm doing now is specifically to address that. I'm looking at schools and trying to find places that we can put that opportunity in. Working with CS for All NYC is one of the organizations that's really what it's about. It's about getting it into every kid's hands. And not just the kids, right? It's teachers. They have to know. And you have to educate them, right? Because they can't. But the education that I gave myself is what I'm trying to give other teachers now, and the CS for All people are trying to give other teachers as well. Getting that opportunity out, it's not as broad right now as it needs to be. It will get, I think the momentum is starting. When we started SEP, it was a cohort of 20 schools, and now it's a cohort of 80 schools. And next year it's going to be a cohort and it's growing and growing and growing. So the work you do and how you work with teachers and how you work with schools, that's helping all of this momentum. It is going to get there, but it takes one school at a time. So
We have another question over here.
Hi, I'm Erin Colley. I'm a K-5 digital literacy educator, and I think my question actually builds off of what she had just mentioned. In a similar concept, thinking about specifically computer science and getting that into the hands of educators. In my position, I've grown a huge passion for computer science, and I know how many great resources there are out there for our students and free resources to use, but really getting other teachers comfortable doing that is the biggest barrier. So rather than it being something that's part of their day every day, it's part of their day 30 times a year, or however often they get that experience. So I guess my question is, how can we start offering things like the Girls Who Code movement for our educators, or something of that concept, so that our teachers can then bring it back to our students and really make it CS for all?
I'm just going to have one quick thing since we don't have a lot of time, and it answers or relates to both questions that were just asked. And it's a matter of perspective, and you know, everybody here might already buy this, but it's worth saying anyway, is there's lenses that one could look through. And if you have the lens of, I don't have enough skills and I don't have enough stuff, then that can prevent activities that are low-hanging fruit, that are the starting points of these journeys into computing and into makerspaces. And so I don't have enough skills. When you take that off, it's like, I have enough, I'm a learner alongside you, and then you can engage people in things that you don't know. That's how you learn as well. So it's not like I need to learn this and then the people can follow me. But if I say, you know, I teach computing classes because computing changes so much, you know, a person from PhD from MIT in computer science and those things, it doesn't matter. You still need to constantly be learning, and there's going to be beyond. So you have to say, I'm going to learn with you, because that allows you to teach things before you've mastered it. And the other thing is, I don't have enough stuff, is the lens of a table full of old telephones, and like if you have a tinker table in the back, that is, one lens is trash and the other lens is something that you can take apart and turn into something else. As long as you give yourself permission to turn it into that, then you're looking at the same thing in two different ways, and that's the start of what a makerspace is, and those are all very low-cost solutions.
We have time for one more question. Who is the lucky person? Right there.
Yeah, hi. This is just a question for Leah. Just in terms of the girls that are coming to your coding club, are they coming to them on their own accord, or are they being pushed by their parents? Are they coming as groups of friends? Just running the background of the students.
I mean, it's girls come from all over. I mean, our summer immersion program, you apply to the program, and that's the way that we actually kind of curate the classrooms, frankly, and try to make sure there's a diversity of girls from different racial, socioeconomic, and ethnic backgrounds. And we don't have a requirement in terms of, we don't have prerequisites in terms of things you have to have done. Increasingly, you know, in our fifth year, we really want to get to the girls who wouldn't naturally think of computer science as something that they want to do. So we do a lot of outreach, a lot of recruitment. We work with a lot of community-based organizations to really try and get at the heart of the problem, which is that most people don't know what code is. So while some people will respond to the, you know, to an organizational name like Girls Who Code, then there are plenty of girls who will be like, now why would I want to spend 7 weeks coding? Like they don't see it. So I think part of it is trying to get a sense of who the girls are, and creating that context and that environment. And then in our after-school program, that is completely, you know, voluntary. We do go out and also really recruit and bring clubs to different communities, but primarily it's voluntary. And just I wanted to just address the other question about how do you have a Girls Who Code for other teachers and for teachers and things like that, and just to say that, I mean, first of all, there are a lot of great resources out there, and if people haven't seen the CS Unplugged website, which is awesome, it's all about computational thinking without using a computer. The Tech Prep website that Facebook put together is also really interesting. It's specifically to help the adults in the world who may have kids who are really into code and coding. But I do think this is this sort of what Aman is talking about in terms of seeing yourself as a facilitative person and a leader becomes really important in thinking about this. And you know, my call to action always, you know, to a room full of people who work with youth is, you know, to really make sure that you have an expansive idea of, you know, of who a coder is, you know, who's interested in this kind of work. Like, not every maker is someone who gravitates towards tinkering in your classroom. It really may be someone who doesn't know that this is something that they're interested in or will be interested in the future.
We have one last question because this educator gave me a really sad face. So here she is.
I'm sorry. I hope this is helpful for everybody. Okay, so when I go back, I'm going to want to start having those questions as an educator that really get my students involved and excited and passionate about what they're going to do. So we're going to do a big unit on researching our family histories. So is there a formula for me to come up with a question or something that they could make? Like, of course, they're going to think family tree, but are they going to think, like, what else can they do? Is there something, that I can, how do you open-end a question so that they just start making? Does that make sense? Okay.
I'm just gonna jump, because the first thing I thought was a coat of arms, that, you can have them design it, and then if you have a 3D printer, you could have them print it out, based on their history, their origins, their culture. If you pull from other cultures, if you can find stories and ways to identify objects that have resonance in their family history, that might also be something that they can create, or a village, or designing. It doesn't have to necessarily be computer code, but you could also have them make a game using Scratch, have them make a family history hunt. I'm just throwing. I would say give them ideas. I would say give them a few project ideas. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's why CS for All. Yes.
Can I say one more thing super fast? Empower them to not answer your question, but ask their own questions. And one of the most powerful tools for that is design process. Mouse has built some curriculum. IDEO has an open design kit, IDEO.org, I think. Check that out and think about methods for brainstorming, how might we questions, and really helping them narrow what matters to them.
IDEO.
IDEO.
I is an ice cream, D is in dog, O is in octopus.
No,
IDEO.
Like idea, but with an O.
Okay.
Idea with an O.
Give this panel a round of applause.